9 days, 600,000 miles of vacuum, and now only a thin sheet of advanced ceramics stands between 4 human beings and a furnace hot enough to melt steel. For the first time in over half a century, a heartbeat has returned from the deep silence of the lunar far side. But the most dangerous part of the journey isn't the vacuum of space or the radiation of the Van Allen belts. It is the final 3 minutes. It is the moment the atmosphere stops being thin air and starts acting like a concrete wall. To understand the magnitude of this moment, we have to look back at the void they left behind. When the Orion spacecraft, christened Integrity, swung around the far side of the moon, the crew of Artemis II became the most distant humans in history. They saw the Earth not as a home, but as a marble, fragile, lonely, and impossibly far away. For 9 days, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen lived in a pressurized canister no larger than a small bedroom. They carried the weight of 8 billion people on their shoulders. They were the scouts, the pathfinders, sent to prove that we could once again bridge the gap between worlds. But space is a jealous host. It does not let go of its travelers easily. As the moon's gravity finally released its grip, Earth's gravity took over, pulling the capsule inward with a terrifying, accelerating force. By the time they reached the outer edges of our atmosphere, they were traveling at speeds that defy human comprehension, 24,000 miles per hour. At that speed, the air itself cannot move out of the way fast enough. It compresses, and in that compression, it ignites. The transition from the velvet black of space to the violent orange of re-entry is a sensory assault. Inside the cabin, the crew felt the first tug of gravity in over a week. What started as a light pressure in their chests quickly became a crushing weight. 4 times their own body weight pressed them into their seats. Outside, the Orion heat shield faced the ultimate test. Temperatures rose to nearly 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. A sheath of ionized plasma enveloped the craft, cutting off all communication with the ground. For several minutes, the world could only wait. In the Mission Control Centers in Houston and on the deck of the USS John P. Murtha waiting in the Pacific, there was a heavy, suffocating silence. This was the blackout. No data, no voices, only the laws of physics and the integrity of a shield designed by thousands of engineers who would never know the crew's names, but held their lives in their hands. The capsule was no longer a spacecraft. It was a falling star. Then, a crackle. A GPS signal blinked back onto a monitor. A voice, strained but calm, broke through the static. High above the clouds, the drogues fired. 2 small parachutes snapped open, stabilizing the wobbling capsule in the thin upper air. Then, the main event. 3 massive, red and white canopies unfurled like blooming flowers against the blue sky. The violence of the descent vanished. The roar of the plasma was replaced by the whistling of the wind. For the crew, this was the first time in 10 days they heard the sound of moving air. They were no longer in a vacuum. They were back in the cradle of life. Below them, the Pacific Ocean stretched out, a vast, shimmering mirror. The recovery teams watched through long-range cameras as the 11-ton craft drifted downward, suspended by nylon threads, looking tiny and insignificant against the scale of the sea. The impact was not a landing, but a collision with the cradle. At exactly 5:07 p.m. local time, Integrity hit the water. A massive plume of white spray erupted as the capsule settled into the swells off the coast of San Diego. The thermal protection system, scarred and blackened by the fire of re-entry, sizzled as it touched the cold salt water. The uprighting bags inflated on top of the craft, ensuring it bobbed safely in the waves. The Navy divers moved in with the precision of a choreographed ballet. In the distance, the silhouette of the recovery ship approached. When the hatch finally opened, the air that rushed in wasn't the recycled metallic oxygen of a space station. It was the scent of salt, dampness, and the living Earth. As the 4 astronauts were assisted onto the inflatable platform,
Their legs were heavy and their balance was gone. But as they looked up at the sun, they weren't just individuals anymore. They were the evidence that the bridge to the stars is still open.